All right, I think we are live. Okay, I just have to, before we do anything else, I just have to add a little thumbnail to this one and just make sure that this thing is live. But yeah, today we are going to be doing sculpting in Blender. What the atrocious thing you can see on my screen right now is the warm-up I did just to get up to start that. Okay, maybe this is too private. Let's see.
It's public here for me.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So look.
All right. Yeah. So just come with your questions, and we'll just answer them throughout. Morten is going to be answering questions, and I'm going to be doing some general sculpting.
So what are you going to be sculpting for us today?
I am going to be sculpting, you're never going to guess it, an orc.
What?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be cool. I've actually found some pretty cool reference from this in, maybe you know this, but in one of the orcs in Lord of the Rings, I think it was in the third one, was inspired by Harvey Weinstein. He was the producer of the movie. He was not, particularly well liked, so for obvious reasons. And so I found a lot of pictures of Harvey Weinstein on my monitor now. Sure, you can see him now. So the court ones are particularly nasty because he obviously looks terrible and he wants to appear to be weaker than he was to get sympathy and stuff. So he looks even more like an orc than he does.
He does have a very sculptural face.
Oh, he does. Very.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Just checking that this link is working. Seems to be. Yeah, seems like everything's working. Then we just put this thing out on our social media. Yeah, we can't really put it out before the stream is live because of the we don't actually know what the URL is going to be. Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. We're looking forward to doing a really weird Harvey Weinstein orc sculpt in Blender. It's going to be the first Blender sculpting in a while.
Delancey is asking, I hope you're good. What are the requirements for submitting assets to the FlipNormals marketplace? Well, it's all individual. We take a look at all the applications, manually and check if we think that the quality sort of matches what we want to put on the marketplace. There's no sort of specific guideline. It's more what do we think is suitable for the marketplace.
Yes, sometimes you have pretty rough, pretty decent looking models, but they're presented in a horrible way, and they just can't be accepted because they look too bad. Or you can also have stuff that is just pretty nice brushes, for instance. You don't need a crazy portfolio for that. Just something that looks nice. Okay, pushing this out. Cool. So we can now get started in 1 second. All right, cool. So now let's get started with this. So in Blender, I'm just going to delete the little chimp I'm sculpting. And then I'm going to start with a cube. And then I'm going to just add some resolution to this guy. Just got to make sure this is enabled. Ooh, it's weird sculpting with like you were using a tablet for polygonal modeling. It's pretty unusual. So I'm basically just adding some resolution to this. So I could do this in a smarter way, no doubt. But now we just have some just a cube, just some very, very quick topology for it. So I'm just going to go into sculpt mode, just Control and Tab, and then all the brushes out here, you can see the names of them. I prefer to keep the icons out so you can actually read them, because the icons are. It's a bit hard to see exactly what the icons are. I'll also add them to my quick favorites as well. So now we can just get started, and we just need to make sure that we have set the symmetry to X. And then I'm just going to look at my creepy reference, and then we're just going to get started with some sculpting. The main stages for all these sculpts are essentially 100% the same. You just get started with just blocking out the character and getting in the anatomy while also trying to get some in proportions going as well. And why are we sculpting in Blender this time? Well, I figured this is a nice little change. No crazy reason, just just nice to vary it a little bit and show that you can indeed sculpt in both Blender and in ZBrush. Though I far prefer sculpting in ZBrush. Like the tools are just much more mature there. Oops.
Sorry about that.
Somebody's asking why not sphere. Whatever works, to be honest. There isn't really like there is no one way of doing it. When you've been sculpting for a while, you can kind of make anything out of anything. In the beginning, it's more important to start from a more reliable way so that you know this is your way of doing it and you know this is going to work every single time. But once you get started with this, or once you've been doing this for a while, it becomes more a case that it's just shape. However you get the shape in there is fine. It doesn't really matter.
It's also nice to, with something like this that has some kind of topology, and really it's a restrict resolution as well that can help you just to focus on the shape instead of getting bogged down with the details too much.
Absolutely. It's much easier to get clean shapes, I find, with this than once we remesh it up there. You can see here if we hit remesh now, it's going to just going to be nasty right away. We're also quite spoiled with the dynameshing in ZBrush. The dynameshing in ZBrush is just better than remesh in Blender. There are problems with add-ons and such that improves it, but the pure or the core remeshing just isn't as nice as the equivalent in ZBrush, which is Dynamesh. Yeah, it's really nice to start with something really low res like this, like you were saying, Morten, that it's just much cleaner. Like you can really focus just on the shape. Of course, you have to convert it to like turn it to Dynamesh or use Dyntopo afterwards, but just nice to have something like this to work from.
Thought of a backstory for your orc yet?
Yeah, he's a movie producer in Los Angeles. And he's producing a lot of really cool movies. And
so he molests people, that's what it is.
Yes, that's exactly it. And then he also was called in by Sauron to help his reign as well. So he's overall a pretty bad dude. And what's kind of cool in Blender is the different modes, like you see Control click here or Control tab. Different modes have different hotkeys, so you can make custom hotkeys for the different ones just to make it a bit easier. So if you need, yeah, so you basically have, you know how Blender is already hotkey based, it's even more hotkey based. But if you work well with hotkeys, then it's fantastic. And yeah, just remember that we have 50% off all our products. That offer ends tomorrow. So be sure to grab any products you've been eyeing currently, or if you have anything in your wish list or anything in general you're interested in, just make sure to check that out. And you can see here the sculpting approach is exactly the same as I have in ZBrush. Obviously the tool is different, but my mental approach is exactly the same. It's get the main shapes first and then worry about the rest later. Get the proportions in. If you get the proportions in early on and get like an overall gesture and flow and all in, it's just going to be so much easier. So I'm just experimenting a little bit with like the thickness of his head. I think I might want to make his face a little bit wider as well. Basically just stylizing a little bit.
I'm sure you guys are asked this a lot, but do you know how to draw in 2D, and is this a requirement to be a good sculptor? I would say for me, like yes and no. Now I don't really draw anymore. I haven't drawn in years. With a couple months of practice again, I could probably get up to a decent level. But I think that also answers the question in terms of sculpting. You don't need to be able to draw in 2D in order to sculpt. It can help in terms of, at least in my view, your perception skills. But in terms of purely translation, the one skill to the next, I don't really feel like there's that big of an overlap, except for the, training your eye and your hand to do movements together. Yeah,
the best way of knowing that drawing is not a requirement. It's just the fact that there are really good sculptors out there who can't draw. They've just never been drawing. So if it was a requirement, then there would be no sculptors who would not be able to draw. And there are plenty, including myself. Like I'm not a great drawer at all. Like doing a bit here and there, of course, but it's not like I'm a concept artist or anything like that. My drawing is far, far, far lower than my sculpting skills.
Yeah, mine doesn't even compare.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no. I mean, I would basically say at this point that I can't really draw. Yeah. So it's
yeah, it's I can draw from a purely like annotation point of view. So I can annotate things and like give some feedback to some people here and there, but in terms of like actually producing a drawing by myself from scratch, like that is, yeah, it's basically deteriorated to the point that it's no longer a skill I possess. So I agree with that.
Hey, Marco. Is the clay strips the same as clay buildup?
Yeah, pretty much. You have two brushes here. You have clay, and this is kind of the clay brush. You see it. I did actually just modify this a little bit. I enabled accumulate. So by default, you see here, it doesn't really build up a lot. Well, you reach a point where clay strips just keeps building up. So yeah, it's basically the same as clay buildup, which is the best brush ever made. Yeah, the sculpting feel in Blender has got so much better over the years. It's a different experience of what it used to be. I remember like you made a course more like an alien sculpting before they added it, and like I was trying to sculpt in Blender at that time, but I couldn't do it. So I don't know how you were even able to do it at that time.
It's funny because I don't actually remember creating the course. Like I have no memory of doing that course. Maybe that's because like sculpting was just awful at the time. I just want to repress it. So maybe I should actually give Blender sculpting a try again to see how it's improved.
It's it's definitely got a lot better. It has a much better brushes and everything. Somebody's asking, are you guys brothers? No, we're not brothers. There's a weird thing though with the whole like don't remember that you made the course, because I've made so many FlipNormals courses now, and sometimes I just straight up forget that I made a whole course as well. It's really weird how that whole thing works. There was something like that with an actor, the guy who played the main character, the guy who played Malcolm in the Middle. There was like a lot of rumors around him, like he had severe brain damage and he couldn't remember parts of his childhood and such, and he couldn't remember whole episodes being filmed. And people took that as like he actually had proper brain damage, but it came out that no, he didn't have brain damage. He was suffering from migraines and such, but when he said that he couldn't remember filming episodes, that's just because they all overlap. It's just if you've been filming like 200 episodes of a show or something like that, you're just not going to remember them. And that is something I very much sympathize, because we have that with FlipNormals. We have like 300 videos now or something like on our YouTube channel, and then we have a lot of videos for our courses as well. And you're just not going to remember every single one of those videos. In reality, you're going to remember a fair few of them, because, well, how could you forget them? Well, do you remember what you spent an afternoon doing in 2018? Like, of course you're not going to remember that. Like, it's just like we've been doing this for a long time now, and they just disappear from memory, either right away afterwards or or after a little bit.
The evil man is saying, so you say that it's useless to learn to draw if you want to become a good sculptor. No, not necessarily. So I would say drawing can be great because it's so accessible. I mean, you literally just have to find a piece of paper and a pen, and then you can start sketching and like I said, develop that connection, that mind muscle connection between your hand, your brain, and your eyes. So in that way, I think there definitely is benefit to it, but it's more that it's not a requirement to be able to draw in order to become a great sculptor.
Yeah, it's more, let's say you have 100 hours and you want to get better at sculpting. Is it better to spend 50 drawing and spend 50 sculpting? I think it's best to spend like basically 100 hours sculpting if you want to get better at sculpting. But if you're attending a uni course or something and you have to draw, or just you've been drawing in general, it's definitely beneficial for it. I'm sure some people would also like disagree with that. If you have 100 hours, that you should spend 100 of them sculpting. But that, you know, it's open for debate, of course. But basically, it all boils down to the fact that you want to spend time on fundamentals. Like, I'm able to just translate my sculpting skills on ZBrush into Blender pretty much right away. Obviously, I made a whole course about this as well. Like, it's not like I'm fresh to sculpting in Blender. But when I was getting into it, it was kind of easy in the sense that I was able to get up to sculpt pretty decent sculpts right away, just because shape is shape, appeal is appeal. The brushes are pretty much named the same. So
Yeah.
the hard thing about sculpting is not an interface. You see here I'm using like 2 brushes and like 1 hotkey, just Control R, and that's it.
Augustine is asking, have you guys considered getting back into the podcast? For me personally, not so much. It's not really a media that I enjoy really. I don't really listen to podcasts, so I think Henning feels differently about it though.
Yeah, it's more like it just takes a lot of time to do, because it's what we've been doing with a lot of podcasts. We haven't really done any podcast specifics. Like we never really sat down and did like, oh, this is just a podcast. But we've done like discussion episodes, and those episodes are like perfectly valid for YouTube as well.
Yeah.
If we were to actually build a podcast, that would be a very, very different thing. That would basically be like a whole strategic thing where we're to do and we have to figure things out and have proper topics, because that would be a whole separate thing than YouTube. Because a video like, hey, how do you fix your pen pressure in Substance Painter, that doesn't work as a podcast. So we never really had the podcast. We just had discussion videos, and we happened to put them into a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like everyone basically wants to be Joe Rogan nowadays.
Yes.
And stuff, but I think for me it's like I don't actually really enjoy interviewing people. I like talking to people, but more the interview format and stuff, and that's not really something that it doesn't really do anything for me. I'm a bigger fan of teaching and explaining subjects and creating content. That's more what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, no, that said, you can do plenty of podcasts which aren't interviews at all. You can you have a guy who's getting really popular now. He's Andrew Huberman, and he just does a lot of discussion videos about health. He's like a Stanford professor, and he just goes through and just, all right, let's talk about alcohol for 2 hours and just like proper things. But that's basically a YouTube video. Like it's a very different kind of thing, because the interviews as well are also really tricky to do. Interviews in general, whenever we've done them, they're hard. And they're really, really hard to get right in terms of you have to become a good interviewer, but also like just scheduling them. It's really tricky. So if we were to start up a podcast at some point, I don't think it would be necessarily like an interview style thing. I think it would be more just Morten and I talking about about things, if anything.
A lot of questions here. I feel like we had a question about using a mouse versus using a pen. Use a pen, not a mouse. I think we've answered that question like 20 times during this Black Friday stream so far.
Yeah, we've had that a few times now. We really should make that FAQ video we're talking about. We keep having the same questions over and over in the stream, and totally fine. It just means that there are people are wondering the same things, but I really think we should make a video just on, hey, here are the most common questions you have. And one of them is like the questions we keep having over and over again is like, should I use a mouse, or do I need a display tablet for sculpting? Do I need to learn to draw? Like these are questions we keep hearing a lot, so probably a good idea for us to do a proper video on that. That would be quite cool.
Yeah. How do I learn anatomy for sculpting? Well, I've got just the course for you. We have a fantastic course by Christian, who did a course called Fundamental Anatomy for Sculptors, which sort of marries all of those subjects together. It's a pretty solid course, and Christian is a fantastic teacher. So one sec, let me get that for you. Anatomy course.
It's also an interesting one because I keep seeing this quite a few times, like what I'm teaching as well, that what you think anatomy is very different from what anatomy actually is. Meaning that, like, yeah, you know that anatomy is just muscles and bones and all that colorful drawings, but that's not necessarily what you actually want to learn. Like, what you might want to learn is like how do you build characters, and not, you do have to know technical anatomy for that, but it's not enough by itself. For that, you need to learn, like, basically what I'm doing now. There's not a lot of anatomy in this per se. Like, it's mostly just like getting in like shape and like all the volume, trying to make appealing things here, looking at my very creepy reference and trying to make something out of that. And anatomy is important, but it's not like the whole thing. It's kind of the same thing. Like, anatomy is almost equivalent to perspective drawing. If you're doing environmental art, yeah, you need to have it there. Or if you're doing environmental drawing, you need to have it there. It needs to be solid, but it's not like just because you can do perspective doesn't mean that you can make appealing environments. You can look at, like, all Bob Ross things and all that. Like, his perspective is, he kind of internalizes it. Like, he's been doing it for such a long time, so the perspective just feels natural. But it's not like he draws perspective lines or anything like that when he's making his when he made his paintings.
Do you happen to know any good sculptor who uses a mouse? No. I don't.
Nope. And just to be clear on this one, it's probably because if you are a good sculptor, you're spending so much time with sculpting, and if you're spending so much time with sculpting using a mouse, you're not a sculptor anymore because your arm has fallen off because it's just gonna be busted.
Thanks for your awesome videos. What do you recommend for sculptors in real life just getting into ZBrush and Blender? I'm familiar with ZBrush, the ZBrush interface, but not the rules of digital sculpting. Well, Henning has made a fantastic introduction to sculpting course.
Oh, hello. I did.
And let me see if I can find it.
I do remember that one.
That's one of our most popular courses.
It was a funny one building that course, because I hadn't really seen that before, because a lot of the intro courses people have made are like introduction to Maya and such. We have that as well, but more like introduction to technical subjects. I hadn't seen anyone really do introduction to a deep fundamental topic like that before. It's been all like sculpting an orc or sculpting something like that, which obviously are, valid courses, but I hadn't seen anyone do something like that, and that worked out really well.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool course, and I mean, it uses ZBrush, but ZBrush isn't a requirement. It's more about the fundamentals of sculpting, not so much the fundamentals of ZBrush.
Yeah, the fundamentals of sculpting are very different from learning ZBrush. You need to be able to operate ZBrush. So if you're completely fresh to it, I recommend getting introduction to ZBrush as well. Just because you still just need to be able to operate it, of course. But then that course is much more about how do you approach sculpting from like a brain point of view. Like, how do you think about sculpting instead of specifically what tools you use.
Yeah.
And I don't mean think about sculpting in the sense of like, what's your opinion about things? More like, okay, here's a sculpt. How do you approach it? A large part of doing art is all mental and just giving you tools for how to do that. What's a glove you're wearing called? I don't know. I can't remember. But
sculpting glove.
It says Doki wear on it. D-O-K-Y, D-O-K-I wear. But it doesn't matter because they're not doing the gloves anymore. So I'm really sad about it because this one is really, really, really hanging by its last thread. Probably should have been replaced 2 years ago. I was trying to, but due to COVID, the supply chain kind of shut down, so they couldn't keep producing them. Let's see if they're still there, because this drawing glove is like the best one I've seen. Doki wear.
I used one for a while with my screen tablet, but I don't know if it's because they're from China or what's happening, but the fit was just uncomfortable. Like it was like a tiny glove. And so instead of ordering a new one, I just sort of got used to not sculpting with one.
That was the I have the same one. That's a Huion one. That's the one that comes
Yeah.
with the Huion. It's tiny. Like it
Mm.
constricts blood flow like to an insane degree. I can't use that at all.
Yeah, that was very uncomfortable. I'm sure there are others out there, but I just didn't bother.
Yeah, looks like the DokuWare might actually be in production again now. So I'm gonna know what I'm gonna buy the first moment I'm done with this stream, because this is the one I have is a little bit of a crime against humanity, probably a bit of a biohazard at this point.
What is your opinion on Dyn Topo?
Yeah, it's cool. Don't really have too much. It's pretty useful tool. It means that, you know, instead of doing a remesh like this, just overall, it means you can just sculpt in a more specific area. So you can just sculpt like here, and you can just like, if it's enabled, and you can just like sculpt, and you get resolution where you want to sculpt, or remove resolution rather where you want to sculpt, depending on the settings for it. So yeah, pretty cool. Very similar to Sculptus Pro in ZBrush, though I still find all the core sculpting tools in ZBrush to be much better. I don't think there are any tools in Blender in pure sculpting wise which I think are better in Blender than ZBrush.
I was curious, do you guys sculpt the caruncula as a separate mesh or the same as the body? Well, it kind of depends your use case, I would say. For just a standard sculpt like this, it would just be part of my sculpt mesh. Not really any different from anything else. But if it needs textures, look dev on it and stuff, all that stuff can be separate because it can be easier to shade. So there's no definitive answer with that specifically, actually.
So would you say more than that? It depends.
It depends. Yeah. Sorry, it's a really lame answer. I know but that is the case for a lot of these things.
What I'm doing now is I'm just kind of lining up the photo. I have a photo on my left monitor, and I'm not really lining it up per se. It's more I'm just looking at the photo and trying to like get a little bit closer in terms of some overall proportions to this ugly man I was sculpting.
How did you guys go about making FlipNormals? Was it a planned thing? Well, Henning and I had both been making tutorials just for free, and like we had some on Vimeo and stuff, I think separately. And then I think one day Henning came to me and was like, we can sell tutorials. And we're like, oh yeah, we should do that. And then we did. And that's kind of how FlippedNormals came about. So
yeah.
I think you saw like a post on Reddit by Andrew, the guy who has a Blender Guru, sort of like about Blender Guru and stuff, and then it just sort of took off from there. I remember when we were sitting in your apartment when we were in school, creating the White Walker video.
Yeah.
Oh man, we had. I think at that time we didn't even have the Yeti mic yet. We were using your headset or something.
Oh my god, yes. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that was very humble beginnings. Yeah, this was 2013, and this was we were final year students at the animation workshop, and then we just kind of started from there. I remember we were sitting in your apartment trying to come up with names. And then just like, all right, let's just go through the Maya interface and such. And at that point, like I think it's called reverse normals now, but it was called FlipNormals back then. It was like, well, that's kind of cool. Thought about it for a few days and was like, yeah, bought a domain, set her up. But it was interesting because like purely from like a technical point of view, it really wasn't possible to do what we did for like, it was kind of like the earliest days because Gumroad was in its infancy. It really wasn't possible to do it because I was thinking about doing something like that for myself a few years earlier. I actually made a whole commercial course, like just by myself, but I just had to delete the whole bloody thing because I couldn't sell it. There was no place to actually sell it by yourself to publish things. So we used Gumroad for a while, and then we just connected it up to a website, and then we were able to actually sell things that way. And then obviously we made our own platform as well. That was a lot of work. Building our platform. Still is, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean the first version of FlipNormals, it's using like this WordPress theme to allow us to sell, and we hit like we had it hooked up through Gumroad. We would sell through Gumroad, but on our own website. And in the meantime, then we started building the first iteration of the marketplace, which was very, very bare bones. That was quite the challenge. Is it bad to sculpt the primary blockout stage with a high resolution Dynamesh? No, not necessarily. It depends on what you're comfortable with. For me, I don't like it, but I know a lot of people that do. So it just kind of depends on your preference. I feel like it's easier for me, at least, to stay away from detailing in the early stages if I restrict myself with my poly count. But doesn't have to be the same thing for everyone.
Yeah, if you have some self-discipline, then it's different. But it's also a case that it's really hard to sculpt when you're a beginner. Like it's really hard. So just by keeping a low res, it means that you're forced to not add the additional polygons to it.
What's a famous movie that you have created models for? Oh, let's see. Gods of Egypt.
Oh, the best one, starting high.
That is the best one. Yeah, that's true. Guardians of the Galaxy, the Harry Potter, Pacific Rim,
Kingsman.
Kingsman. That's true. Yeah. I worked on Infinity War for like a week, so that definitely counts.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Thinking what else did you work on? First Pacific Rim.
That's true. Also, the first Pacific Rim. Yeah. I don't know. It sort of slipped. I have an IMDb page. It should be there.
That's what I always do when asked about that. I'd be like, Google that, and then just inputting or just looking at what's there. The interesting thing about IMDb page is that you can kind of just input whatever you want to. I thought it was like a super official thing that a producer looks into and looks at the credits. No, you can just input whatever you want to on the IMDb.
And one of my favorites was this Mexican film where I had to create a tentacle monster.
Ooh, yeah, I remember that one.
That's a spicy one. That alien does some things with those tentacles. Let's just put it that way.
I think the stream is marked for, like, it's marked for not for kids, so maybe it's fine to talk about. But if it was, it would not be fine.
What's it called? I mean, it's an odd film.
Yeah, and nobody should ever Google Mexican tentacle movie.
Mexican tentacle movie. Oh, apparently I worked on Black Panther. What did I do on Black Panther?
Huh.
What did I do? Oh, yeah, that's right. I did. I think I did corrective shapes and stuff. I did some penis work for
Nice.
The main guy. I remember there was some stuff that needed correcting in his crotch. The animation was all weird. What is it called? I can't
remember how we just talked about the whole, you can't remember what you worked on, like YouTube videos you worked on, and this is like Black Panther, yeah, the biggest feature film of like 2019 or whenever it came out. Yeah, that one.
The Mexican film is called The Untamed. Yeah. The interesting bit is near the end. That's I'll just say that. There's one how to get a job, buddy. I don't know how many places I've applied to and I didn't get a positive response from anywhere. That's a tough one. I mean, it kind of depends on what the studio is looking for, I guess, and also skill level wise. If maybe you're not the right fit, maybe they don't think your skills are up to par. So it's really, it can be a mix of a lot of things. And so if you do get a response, sometimes, a lot of times you won't even get a response from studios. But if you do get a response, it's always nice to sort of do a follow-up and see if there's anything you can do to improve your chances for, future applications.
I always recommend talking to professionals in the field and asking them if they have just like a few minutes to give like an honest review of your skill level. Because the worst thing you can do is just to keep applying with the same portfolio over and over again if that portfolio just isn't good enough. Because there is a case if you're applying for jobs and you aren't getting responses. Either the portfolio isn't there and they don't think you're a good candidate, or it's just like bad timing. or something like
Yeah.
that, where has nothing to do with any fault of your own. It's just the fact that it's just bad timing. You see this all over all the time. Like I know a lot of people, like in London now, and I talk to a lot of VFX artists, and they just not been getting responses from really high-end studios, even though they've been working at high-end studios. But if it's a case that it is actually a skill level, you need to know that. It's really important to just be like, suck it up and just embrace the fact that you need to figure that out. And then find somebody on stage on LinkedIn, send them a short, polite message, explaining the situation, and just being like, just quick yes or no, is my portfolio good enough for this position? And if no, well, good news, then you know why. If yes, also good news. That means that you can keep on applying. But at least you'll get data on it, and you either it means that you can continue doing what you're doing and it's a timing issue, or you have to change what you're doing, and you just have to update your improve your skills in that, which is simple but not easy. Because just get better. Cool, thanks. It's not like it's just not like the most reassuring answer, but at least there is a simple answer to it. Why am I not getting jobs? Well, my skills are not up to the level of that. All right, then you can fix that.
The work I did on Gods of Egypt wasn't amazing. It was just bricks and rocks, and more rocks and bricks. That's pretty much it. I think I did sculpt an elephant though. Yeah, I did sculpt an elephant. Was there anything else? I think it was mainly rocks. I did rocks for like 6 months.
Yeah, I saw one of the sequences from Gods of Egypt. That looks legit like it was previous.
It's terrible. And like the different vendors also just delivered. I mean, there's this one sequence where there's a minotaur fighting on top of a waterfall or something. I think that's like the most notorious sequence. That looks legit like shitty in-game stuff.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about, where it looks straight up like previous.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that happened. How can that stuff possibly ever get approved?
Well, let me tell you. So I have a story. It was one of the dailies for. Oh, I also made a shield. Yeah, a shield that breaks. It looks terrible in sequence, but I made a shield. It was like my first job, so it was a lot of fun. But we were in this daily, and one of the gods has a golden chariot, and I think there's like some scarabs on it, and it's gold. And this is the first time it's being presented in dailies. So we've seen the model and everything, and this is the first time with textures, and it's been looked at. And the guy who's presenting it just says, "Yeah, here's my first iteration of the chariot. It's still a very work in progress." And the supervisor just goes like, "Yeah, it's approved." And all of us are like, "What?" "Yeah, let's get into shot. It's done." And the texture artist or the look dev artist, he's baffled. It's like, "What do you mean? It's just my first iteration." And I kid you not, the supervisor just goes, "Well, listen, we're not going to win any awards for this film, so let's just get it out there." So I'm pretty sure that's why the film looks the way it does.
Did the film win any awards though? Was he right about this, or was he wrong about that?
I mean, it could have won awards for the shittiest film ever.
Like
that's
a Razzie
that's
award.
A possibility. Yeah. No, I don't think it's not bad. Though it is like it's unironically bad, but good. It's one of those films.
yeah, that kind.
Where you watch it and you think to yourself, okay, it was just bad enough so that I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I see. Here's a question relating to that, Morten. This is not from chat. This is just me being curious. Is there a connection between how good the end product turned out of a film or in a project and how much fun you had working on that? Or is that just entirely decoupled?
I would say decoupled, because Gods of Egypt was, I mean, hands down, one of my favorite projects to work on. Like, it was just a lot of fun. The team didn't give a shit, and we all just had a laugh, and it was just a good time. But some of the more high-end stuff, like the Marvel stuff, everyone is so serious at dailies and everything has to be perfect. And sometimes your life is miserable because you have to do the same thing 4 times in order to get the approval from a supervisor. So I don't know. I wouldn't say so. At least not for me.
Exactly the same experience, yeah. The Marvel is also, particularly in Marvel, is like a notoriously difficult client. They're, yeah, nobody really enjoys that as far as I know.
I think it sort of went downhill a couple of years after we started, because before that they were much more relaxed, like Disney. But then maybe Disney bought them at that time, or I can't really remember the timeline, but something happened and Disney, Marvel, they just locked down everything. Now you had to be like a Marvel approved studio. And so they had to have representatives come out to the studios to inspect everything. All studios had to have offline machines set up specifically for the projects that they were working on. They couldn't be connected to the internet, so you couldn't leak stuff because there were some issues at MPC. So that wasn't great with that one guy. Yeah, so things like that made it a lot more sour to do Marvel stuff. But that was like before I ever went on a Marvel project. I just know that it happened in the studios. Do you remember that guy? That was it? No, that was Godzilla, I think, right?
Can't remember. There's been a few of these leaks throughout the years. There's
was
always this one guy.
There was this one guy who. Ah, I know what it is. I know what it was. It was Justice League. Yeah. Okay. So that was DC. He confirmed the sequel to Justice League before it had been confirmed or something. But he was like, the weird thing, he was lying about it.
Well, you know, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, of course.
He didn't know that there was a sequel. It was just something that he said. Kind of weird.
Yeah, don't do that. Basically, don't talk publicly about anything you're working on. Terrible idea.
I think he went into games though, like the games industry. Like, he was pretty much blacklisted for VFX after that, I think.
Oh man.
Doing retopo from ZBrush to Blender, do you first decimate the model in ZBrush, then import it into Blender to retopo? Do you have an answer, Annie?
Oh, sorry, was this for me?
Yeah,
I was
whatever.
I was sculpting a cheekbone. When doing retopo from ZBrush to Blender, do you first decimate the model in ZBrush? Yes. Yes, you generally have to decimate your model before you do any kind of retopology. Also because like it's just really stupid not to. Even if your sculpt in ZBrush is like 100,000 polys or something, then you might as well, because there's no disadvantage to doing that. Because
things have a tendency to get super heavy.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a software like that where you have to undo a lot and go back and forth. It's just 100 times easier to do it with a retopologized mesh.
Yeah, there's a thing in if somebody has Maya, there is something called GPU acceleration, I think it is, for retopology. Really speeds it up. It's called GPU cache. You don't have that in Blender, but it's basically a way for speeding up retopology significantly. It makes it much easier to work with. You just load in. You have to export your model out from Maya as a GPU cache, and then you just load it in as a GPU cache, and everything is so much easier.
Someone's asking, what things can actually end up blacklisting you from the industry? Well, I just want to clarify something. Like, you're not technically allowed to do that. And studios, they can't really share details. But this was a public post, I think, on his website or something. It was really odd. So
yeah, there's no such thing as an actual industry blacklist. It's not like there's a black book on the CEO of a studio's desk or something. It's more just like, if they Google your name, they're gonna be like, okay.
Yeah, there were always rumors floating around that the studios were sharing salary levels with each other, which is also super illegal.
Illegal.
Nothing that I can't really confirm that was true or not. But when I was working, I made it a point because like all the studios will tell you that you're not legally allowed to talk about your salary. with your coworkers, right? This is something, and they send out emails about this stuff, like company-wide emails. We just want to remind you that legally you're not allowed to talk to your colleagues about your salary, which is illegal. You can't put that in a contract. And so I made it a point, basically from day one, to always talk about my salary. I would very publicly talk to people what I got as a salary, and that also meant that other people were more comfortable talking about their salaries. So I have this like giant spreadsheet of people in VFX, their levels, their salaries, and everything, because that was to my advantage. Because I knew when I went into an interview, I knew what to expect from a certain role, and sort of what the salary range was going to be.
Now, to a point what you were talking about earlier, if you don't know if there was actually confirmed that the studios were like scheming with salaries. In the UK, not so much confirmed. Statewide though, very much confirmed. You had a huge scandal with Pixar.
Pixar, yeah.
I think it was Pixar, DreamWorks, some of the other ones. I think Sony was the only one who didn't do it. Basically, if you search for like Pixar wage fixing scandal, you're gonna see that it was like a massive thing. It was a way to artificially keep the salaries down, which was obviously
so
bad.
Shady.
So shady. Yeah, don't do a wage fixing. See if you can actually find that one. Actually, it's pretty interesting. Pixar wage, and then you search for the autofills is wage fixing. Lucasfilm and Pixar later settled civil litigation 2013 after a group of Silicon Valley workers named the company in a wage-fixing lawsuit. And other companies also settled, including Apple, Google, Adobe, and Intel, which agreed to pay $450 million. That settlement was approved in 2015. Yeah, first... the second one, Cartoon Brew, Ed Catmull, former CEO of Pixar, or maybe current, on wage fixing. I don't apologize for this. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, let me just do something highly illegal, but I think morally it's right.
Yeah, I don't know the details of that, because it's also a tricky one when it comes to it. It's like people can't recognize that the same person can do something good and do something bad. Like if you people are just regarding Ed Catmull as bad for this or good for whatever other things he's done, it's like no. He's completely revolutionized the field of CG and the entertainment. I mean, if you have the algorithm Catmull Clark, that's the Catmull in Catmull Clark, and obviously revolutionized animation with Pixar and everything like that. At the same time, somebody can also be responsible for things that are detrimental to the industry in terms of not paying workers enough and such.
Yeah, I mean, just take Elon Musk as an example, like revolutionizing the space industry and what he's doing for electric cars, but doesn't really sound like he's treating his workers at the Tesla factories very well.
No, you can do that. You can be one of the people responsible for the electric vehicle boom, and at the same time also try to destroy unions happening. Right? It's people can do. People are not just on a pendulum for good or bad. It's a series of choices.
Here's a 3D related question.
Oh, nice.
Should you keep topology clean before moving on to the details, or do you tackle that in the end?
Definitely keep your topology clean before, like once you're doing a retopology. At least you want to do once your retopology is done, you're kind of done with that. You don't want to have to worry about modifying topology later on. I need to Weinstein this guy up, because he's a bit like he's getting there in terms of like your pure anatomy and like feeling like he's solid, but in terms of he needs to be a bit more disgusting.
He reminds me of someone. Definitely not Harvey Weinstein. That's not it. But it's not disgusting enough.
No, we definitely have to do something about that. Here's a little tip, by the way, for like making more interesting characters. If you're seeing, like, I'm going to draw a little thing on top here. Morten will not be able to see this, but he will just have to trust me. So if you see a curve like this going like so, what you can do, you can push the different things to be more extreme. So if a curve goes like so, you can make the curve even more extreme. If something goes outwards like so, you can make it go even more outwards, and this is going to like make it a bit more of a caricature, but oftentimes this is exactly what you need. If a nose goes down like so, you can make the nose go even further and really just like push it around. So that's like a good way, like a good and simple way of just making the design a little bit more interesting. If something goes in, make it push it more in. If something goes out, push it a bit more out. Because more likely than not, you haven't pushed things enough. And also evaluate the character from all angles as well. It's really important because it's really easy to miss one angle or to only look at it from front and side view.
Henry says the cool thing about Blender is you see a real 3D model. Yeah, that is. I mean, that's one of my favorite features about it when I did some sculpting, was being able to also light it.
Yeah.
You know, I would often have a split viewport where I would sculpt on the one and then I'd be able to see my changes in real time on the other monitor. And sometimes I would sculpt on the version I'm lighting just to accentuate shadowy areas or something like that.
It's really cool that you can do that. You can just like go in and you can go a little crazy with this. Like how much variation there actually is in, or how much you can do in Blender like this is fantastic. This is also why I really recommend Blender for as a general sculpting tool like this, because it's in ZBrush you can't really change these kind of things. If you need to work for something with a specific camera angle or something like that, I really think Blender is better in that regard, because you can really lock the camera. So if you're sculpting an environment or something and you need to have a rock in a highly specific spot, it's really good for that. But if you if you're hardcore at sculpting, meaning that like this is what you want to do, you want to really like just focus on sculpting forever and ever and ever, then ZBrush is going to be more solid for that. But pros and cons for everything. A huge pro of Blender is the fact that it's not just a sculpting tool, but a huge con for Blender is the fact that it's not just a sculpting tool. But here you can see, right, like here in the nice streets of Amsterdam, you can see our little goblin head floating around. And this is with cycles rendering now and an HDRI. This is literally impossible to do in ZBrush. Like you just can't even dream of this. If this here was added to ZBrush, that would be like a revolutionary feature. So it's really, really cool. And you can adjust shaders and everything on the fly like this. Just gotta make sure I don't do this too much because my OBS will be complaining. So this is probably like, in terms of the pure sculpting tools, I don't think there's anything directly that Blender is better at. But in terms of the more holistic side of it, like making like as an experience for the final output, then this is definitely a huge advantage Blender has over ZBrush. The fact that you can use proper polygon modeling tools, if you want to give this guy some eyes, we can do that real quick. Just throw in some eyes here. We can do that with proper topology tools, not like that weirdness that exists within ZBrush, right? Which is like, you know, whatever the hell that is. It's really important to give the guy some eyes as well early on. Like whenever you're doing characters, just try to give them eyes pretty early on. Just because that's going to add a lot of character to them, but also because it's going to, you need them for the eye socket as well. It's basically impossible to do proper eye sockets without this. Just adding a mirror modifier, doing this, and then we should have this guy here, and there we go. So now we have some eyes on our little fellow. They also added a new feature in one of the latest versions, maybe, where basically you don't have to go in and out of sculpt mode in order to switch to sculpt mode. Because currently, if I want to sculpt on the eyes here, what I can do, I can just hit. You see this little icon up here next to it. So we have this and this. You can just tap on that icon, and then you can very quickly switch between the two. Because it used to be a bit of a pain. You had to go out, you had to go into like object mode, then you had to go in here, and then you had to go into sculpt mode. Then you can sculpt it, but now you just go in here and you just hit boop. And now I'm in sculpt mode for this one. So very, very useful that you can do that.
Did you change the focal length before you started sculpting in Blender?
Nope. Default Blender at the moment.
That's something that I do sometimes in ZBrush actually. I prefer to like have it set to like 50 mil.
What's the default in ZBrush? I can't remember that. Is it like 30?
See, I'm thinking it's 35, but mine has been set to 50 for so long that maybe it's the default. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, can you even change the focal length of a Blender viewport?
A Blender viewport?
Yeah, because if
that... yes, in the camera settings thing, yes, you can.
Oh, okay. Because I know you can look, if you look through the camera, you can do that, but I don't know you can do it for the actual default viewport. Don't worry now. Just trying to get the eyes right. One of the things I'm really trying to do with the eyes is, currently you can see that an issue is that the eye is too round here, and I'm really trying to make sure that it goes into more of a corner. Same thing going up like so as well. Here it needs to go into a corner. Then we need also like the carancula here. And then what I'm looking at here in my reference is that there's like a fat pad and skin pad that goes over it like so. I'm not sure exactly how much is going to go like this in my sculpt, but basically something like this. I want parts of the eyebrow or the eyelids to be obscured by like the fat pad going over it. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that the shape is in a decent spot as well. Something you can also think about when it comes to eyes as well is you have a point here and you have a point here. And what angle is this point? Like in this case, it's basically like just like 90 degrees. But you can also do the opposite where like, well, not the opposite, something else where it's this point is higher so that the eyes are slanted. Or you can do the opposite where the eyes are like going the other way, down like so. So that can work quite well. You can get really nice results just by changing that. We've been working on a face VDM kit, which we've just been looking at a ton of different eyes. And one of the things I've learned from that is that while of course there is a crazy amount of variation in the eyes, in the actual shape of the eye there is less variation. A lot of the variation has to do with the size of the eye and has to do with the like the angle of the eye. Of course there's a variation in between, but not like enough to warrant the creation of a whole new like eye VDM brush. So that's pretty interesting actually.
Dave says that the default focal length in ZBrush is 50 mil. So maybe I've just convinced myself that I've changed that.
There you go. Or maybe, yeah, no, probably. They could have also just, you did that years ago and then they've changed the default.
Yeah, maybe. It could be. Next live stream is tomorrow.
And what are we doing tomorrow, Martin?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe we're going to give our totally not stolen Prothean some kind of armor or clothing or something in ZBrush. I haven't quite decided yet.
I think people would love to see some armor sculpting in ZBrush, some like hard surface things or something.
Yeah, that could definitely be done.
I'm really trying now in the sculpt to just like separate out like the fat pad over the eye and the loose skin as well. Really just trying to make this a separate thing so you can feel where the bone goes as well. This is tricky to get right, but really important to think about.
No, I won't be doing it. I won't be doing anything in Marvelous. Sorry. So what's the next step going to be for Harvey Weinstein here?
Yeah, so currently I'm refining a lot of different shapes. Like I find that sculpting is either a combination of doing something massive and fundamental, just like creating a cataclysm within it, or it's just like a series of very, very small steps. I've been going through a few like cataclysms, and now I'm just going through and just like nudging things up and down. Basically something wasn't working, and I'm never really sure if it is like I have to just like introduce like a giant flood killing all of mankind in here, or if I just have to like move some points around. Sometimes it's just like, oh, you just have to move the corner of the eye and the thing is gonna work, or sometimes you just have to go in and just like nuke the whole thing.
Yeah. It's annoying when you're at the nuke stage because you just realize, oh shit, can't be saved. I'll just have to start over.
Yeah, that was one of the questions we had earlier this week. Well, I'm going for stream for a week now, but it was like, what do we do if the piece just doesn't work? It's like, yeah, sorry, buddy, you just probably just gotta start over. Because you reach a point where like you could, in theory, fix something, but man, a lot of times you just have to just scrap the whole thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
It's very tricky to know when that is, and very, very annoying when that happens.
It does look a little bit like Quentin Tarantino. Yeah,
Oh.
that's true.
Well,
That was funny. Someone said the other day, your realistic portrait masterclass thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looks a lot like this. I think he's an Irish comedian. Yeah, he's an Irish comedian called Dara O'Brien.
Oh yeah.
He looks a lot like him. I was like, I can't unsee that anymore.
Yeah, there was some people who also said that he looked like the former president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. I'm not sure if you know what it looks like, but pretty similar.
Yeah.
It was funny with that one because that was a personal project I made like in 2020 during COVID, and
It was based on like some Norwegian dude, right?
yeah, it's based around like a. I'm not sure of exactly what it is. He's some kind of like. Some kind of criminal for sure. He might be something to do with like the salmon trade or something in Norway. But regardless, it was just like a picture.
Definitely criminal.
Definitely criminal. It was he was convicted of some kind of fraud, and he was in a Norwegian newspaper. And I was like, this is the coolest face I've ever seen. I'm going to take a photo because his facial expression is so good, and that's something that a lot of people have commented on, that they like the facial expression in the character portrait masterclass. Yeah, I just kind of stole that from.
He looks so guilty.
Yeah, he looks so guilty because this guy I think he just came out of a courtroom or something when that photo was taken. So yeah, I mean, but that's actually a good like topic to talk about. Like when it comes to like inspiration, you can find inspiration in tons of different places. You don't have to find this inspiration art station for your piece, or just from like some fantasy lore thing. You just look at court pictures of things. That's what a lot of like the most recent sculptures have done. They've been from mugshots from the 1800s and people being convicted of old-timer crimes, and it's a really good reference. Basically, try to find reference in the real world and not just artsy reference, or not just somebody else who's done some work and you're inspired by them. Try to find like what inspired them in the first place.
CG Key is saying, in all caps, they're sculpting in Blender. I probably didn't convey the enthusiasm there, but that's it.
Yeah, but thank you for not conveying the enthusiasm, because that saved my ears from.
Next time I'll just scream into the mic. Don't forget to click that like button for things you enjoy. Oh, yeah, I was like, what? Okay, yeah, that's not me saying it, it's me reading a comment telling people to click the like button. I never even really thought about that. Yeah, you can like a stream as well, of course.
Yeah, I kind of think one of the things we're trying to kind of avoid with YouTube as well is also the whole like
YouTube,
like the whole like smash the button and all of that type of stuff. Yeah, you know, click it and all helps us, but I think that might be one of the things that attract people to our channel as well, is the fact that it's more just like, all right, here's how you do something in 3D, instead of like a crazy like you want to get your personality across. It's more about the work itself, instead of us being like some producers or some kind of like host by itself. It's more about what we're trying to say instead of being about us.
Personally, for me, I can't watch videos like that where you can tell that there's a personality on top of the person. I was watching, for whatever reason, there was a recommendation that came up, like you have to learn SQL like the database programming language, of course, as you would know.
Yeah, obviously.
Why I clicked that video, I don't know. Maybe because I know a little bit of SQL, but whatever. And the dude who was presenting it, it was like I was on this roller coaster ride of emotions about it's a programming language. Like no matter how much hype and enthusiasm you put into it, it doesn't get that interesting. And I just had to click away. It was like, nope, you lost me.
Yeah, I found that to be a thing with a lot of YouTubers that it's really hard if you're doing like maybe a gaming YouTube or something like that where it's really hard to stand out from the crowd, and then people have to resort to such extreme things instead of what we're trying to do, which is more, well, we kind of want people to learn some CG, and then you kind of trying to get away personalities away from that instead of it being like instead of it being about us. It's really annoying when they just go too crazy with that.
Yeah. Duffy Dan is asking me when I'm gonna post on my personal YouTube channel again. Oh man, I don't know. I have. It depends which personal YouTube channel you're talking about because I have like 5. So, but maybe like the main one. The annoying thing is I have a bunch of content that I filmed in Japan when I was doing the pilgrimage with my wife and my mom. And it's something that I actually want to get edited and put up there because it's just nice to have. But I mean, first of all, they take a long time to go through the footage and then edit. And maybe sometime next year when hopefully, you know, we got the new website up and running and things calm down a little bit more. It'll be nice to get back to. Does Morten speak Japanese? I would say no. I can get by, but I do not speak Japanese.
It was very helpful in Japan, though.
It was, yeah, that is true. That is true. But you know, it's like the basic stuff. I can get around. I can order what we need to order. I can read the essentials off of the menu. But for living there, like permanently, I don't know enough Japanese. Like we had to get my Japanese dad to help with some things, and yeah, that was for my level. I need a Japanese person to help me if I'm going to live there. And not that I'm going to live there again, but yeah.
Have you been keeping up with geometry nodes in Blender? What are your thoughts on it? Nope.
Yeah, I haven't really. I mean, the only thing I've done with geometry nodes has been take advantage of the additions that were added to geometry nodes with converting volumes to meshes, which has nothing to do with geometry nodes, but it only exists as a feature. It was like it existed in the beta under the geometry nodes for whatever reason, not the normal nodes. It's something that I want to give a try, because it looks super powerful, but I don't really know too much about it.
It's really tricky to find time to learn all the new things as well. Like every year there's just more and more stuff, and like I'm trying to keep up to date on things, but my god, if you fall off and you're not up to date, particularly suddenly like, oh, now probably it's a good idea to learn Houdini. Oh, just learn Houdini. Cool, let me just do that
Let me do that
real quick. It's it gets really busy in my head when I'm starting to learn all these software, because it's also maintaining it. Like I haven't used Mari in a while. Probably a good idea to maintain that. Oh no, I have to do a little project in Mari for that to stay maintained and learning new things. And there's just an endless thing to learn, which is also awesome. It's also really cool that there's always something new to learn, but it's pretty busy.
Is it better to sculpt the facial expression from the start or sculpt the default face first and then pose it? I mean, if you're just doing a sculpt, then fairly early on, you can start to incorporate the facial features, because it dominates the face so heavily. Especially depending on the expressions, it can really start to move a lot of mass around the face, which drastically, I mean, wholeheartedly just changes the way your sculpt is going to turn out. So that can definitely be helpful to think about incorporating early on. If it's for any kind of production, then no, you want it as neutral as possible, and then you add the expressions later.
Yeah, regardless of it, it's probably a good idea to get the skull right at least early on, because that's going to remain the same unless you have a unless you're dealing with unless you're opening your mouth in something where the jaw actually changes. But yeah, it's probably a good idea to get into the first facial expression pretty early on. It's one of those things we'll be talking a bit about this week in some of the streams, so you can check out the previous streams you list on our channels. But when it comes to muscles in the body, you don't really see them too much in a neutral state. When you just have a person like this, you don't really see too many of them. But once you start to compress and stretch your face with facial expressions, that's when your muscles really become important, and it just deforms the face in beyond crazy ways.
I just want to apologize, I think. So YouTube prompted me and said, now would be a great time to insert an ad. So I clicked the button, not knowing what it would do. Apparently that just inserts an ad. So I don't know if people are watching an ad or anything right now, or if it's like it's after the fact. I have no idea how it works.
Let's see what happens.
So if someone sees an ad, please let me know. I mean, our viewership went up when I pressed the insert ad button, so that's
that's what they're here for, all the high quality ads. Wonder what the ads are for. Maybe it's for like gold or something.
I would assume it's probably individual. I would think.
Yeah, probably is.
So if you do a lot of gold panning, then yeah, maybe you would see ads for gold. We did watch ads. Oh, great. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I guess that one is a good idea. I think we talked about this a bit before, but like if you need to go to the toilet or something, then it's like, all right, you might as well do a little ad break. Yeah, I've also been on YouTube Premium for years and I haven't seen any ads. It's like...
I can't go back. I cannot go back.
I checked the stats. Like yesterday, there's a button saying like your benefits, and it's like YouTube hours watched without ads, and I think it said like 100 hours, and I don't even use YouTube that much, and that's still like 100 hours. Why?
I wouldn't check my stat. That's gonna be way too high.
Yeah. Here's a question: why Blender? Felt like do something different. And not really, just showing that you can sculpt in Blender or ZBrush, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter which one, like ultimately it doesn't really matter which one you're using, at least not for this stage, because this is all just shape. If you're doing a final sculpt, it very much matters. Like you can get a higher poly count and such in ZBrush, and everything is much smoother, and from production point of view, much better to use ZBrush for this. But I just want to show that it's not like there's some magical thing in ZBrush that means that we get good sculpt. It's just sculpt and technique. Also, as a little reminder, speaking of that, we have 50% off all our courses, and here, for instance, is Introduction to Sculpting in Blender, and this is where you learn, well, really how to sculpt in Blender. So this is really cool because it goes through all the tools. It's like almost 7 hours. It goes through all the tools and also goes through how to do proper sculpting theory as well. Also, here's another one, Intro to Sculpting. This one is really solid for learning how to sculpt. So if you want to learn how to properly sculpt, this is agnostic. We are using ZBrush, but it's entirely agnostic in terms of the techniques and the theory. And the last one, if anyone is actually watching this and they're like, oh man, Blender looks pretty sweet, then here's a course for you which is really interesting. This is for people who already know how to... This is not a sculpting course, this is a general course. This is for people who already know how to operate 3D, like how to use 3D software, but they don't want to sit through beginner tutorials when learning Blender. So this is where we already assume you know what the different tools are. Or if there's something new in Blender, we'll of course just explain that. But basically, you just don't want to sit through beginner tutorials when it comes to learning the software. So here it's like, all right, cool. This is retopology, and this is how you do the retop. We're not explaining the edge loops or anything like that. It's just like, this is how you do it. Boom, next one. This is how you do UVs. Boom, next one. So it means it's a much like it's like 10 hours long, but it's a very compressed course. You learn a lot in it. Well, something like our Intro to Blender course is really good if you're interested in just learning it from scratch. So both Intro to Blender and Switching to Blender are really solid courses, just for a very different target audience. And we kind of have to have those two different target audiences, because if you want to switch to Blender, but you have to sit through, this is what a polygon is, and this is what a material is, you're just going to go crazy, and you're just going to have to skip around a lot. Well, if you're a complete beginner, and we skip all that, you're not going to get anything from it. So basically, learning Blender, you need to separate into like 2 courses to keep people from not going insane.
Henning, could you sculpt using a middle school secondhand Casio calculator and it would still look good?
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't a question, it was just a statement.
Well, still the answer is yes. I made a video, really, this is my personal YouTube video from years ago, where this was when people would always be like, hey, I sculpted a character from a sphere or from this, and I was like, well, let's just see what we can sculpt it from. So I sculpted like a sea monster from a hairdryer. I just found a model of a hairdryer and just sculpted it from that. This is like almost 10 years ago now. But
I remember that.
It's just like a fun little thing. It just means you can sculpt anything from anything. Honestly, like just looking around, like I have a Red Bull can. You could sculpt anything from that because it's all just shape. The only thing a base mesh is going to help with is going to help you get to the result faster. Or if you're the result might also look better as well, because the base mesh already has a lot of shapes pre-built into it. But hopefully you should be able to get to that result, just the same result, just faster.
For 3ds Max users switching to Blender, do you guys suggest the default keymap or the industry compatible keymap? We always, without exception, pretty much recommend the default keymap for anyone switching to Blender, because the majority, if not all, basically all tutorials out there will use the default keymapping. And using the industry keymap, if that's what you've set up, especially with such a shortcut hotkey based software, it's going to be impossible to follow the tutorials. I mean, down the line, once you have a solid grasp of Blender and it's something that you want to play around with, then yeah, but then again, then what's the point? Now you already know the hotkeys. So I have a hard time seeing sort of the justification for the industry compatible keymap. I would love to hear like from people who've actually done it and then are able to sort of work with it day to day or follow tutorials, how they get around that.
What do people refer to the term these days? Is it shortcuts or hotkeys? I've always just been using hotkeys, but I hear more and more people just saying it's a shortcut. Like, well, what do you use, Morten, for hotkey shortcuts?
Keymap, hotkey, shortcut, whatever comes to mind. I think maybe hotkey is a better. That's probably what I would say the most. Yeah, that's probably what I would say the most, hotkey.
Because I felt like I've been using the word hotkey forever, and I thought everyone was using it, and then suddenly, like, I wake up one day and now people call them shortcuts, and they've been probably doing that forever and ever and ever. I just haven't noticed.
Good morning. I'm currently learning UE5 at the moment, and I would love to learn Blender as well. This beginner course could help me with sculpting as a beginner as well. Yes. Yes, it could. No, unfortunately, we don't give course completion certificates. It's something that has been requested quite a lot, so it's probably something we'll be adding down the line. But it's also tricky because just because you download a course doesn't mean you've completed it, and it sort of feeds better into a streaming platform, which is also something we've talked about doing with our courses, but that's a whole, like, big thing.
Yeah, it's something I would actually be genuinely curious to know for people who are interested in the in the completion certificate? Like, what is the actual reason for that? And I mean that like without any like judgment. I'm just genuinely curious, because if we need to build a feature like that, it's obviously quite a work just to build any feature. So what purpose does that feature serve? Because I've seen some people, they like one guy now, he was using something similar like that for a visa application. He was he needed to get a visa in Canada, and then he was trying to replace, like he didn't have a formal education, but he took a lot of courses around. So he had like some from Imaginary Studio or like the Bubba Chew Studio, and they were like, well, there is a completion certificate here, and they're trying to use that along with some other things kind of as replacement. And maybe the government is going to accept that if you have enough of them or something. But I'm very curious about the purpose of that.
Interesting.
On the second one for now, I am trying to find some teeth. It's pretty hard to, because I need to just throw some teeth in here, but because I can't not have teeth on a character like this. Let's see what this teeth are.
Maybe you can. Maybe he's a retired orc.
Yeah, he could be. But then
maybe he's in prison and he's got his teeth knocked out because he molested so many people.
Oh yeah. The reason for that, Morten mentioned that, is because we used this as Harvey Weinstein as reference, because that's on a reference. Because they used him for reference for an orc or something for Lord of the Rings.
They're saying because Indian companies ask for course certificates, and I'm pretty sure we've had this question a lot from people from India. So that's
okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
But it's an interesting thing, right? When you have when you have a course you can download, because it's kind of hard to verify that you've completed the course.
Oh yeah, there's no way at all for us to be able to verify it if anyone has completed a course. It would have to be some kind of self-verification. Be like, do you promise? Be like, yes.
Yeah, or like
super promise.
We have like somewhere in this 20-hour course, we will say a phrase.
Yeah.
Type in the phrase, and if you type in the phrase, then you get your certificate.
Yeah, something like that. It's actually not a. Well, maybe it's a terrible idea. I don't know. It doesn't sound like a terrible idea, just from the.
I feel like it would be a terrible idea because I mean, you zone out, and like you're not gonna care unless it's like specifically this is one section where we say, okay, this is your secret phrase for course completion, and it's 18 hours into the 20-hour course.
Yeah. Have them submit a specific homework. Yeah, the problem is just that then we have to review homework, and that's a whole different thing again, because then it's not just like a self-driving course. Then we need to be a lot more active, because if let's say we have like 50 courses, and now we have to review homework for each one of them. So we can't do that, because that would be a very different pricing model for a course. But if we don't do that, it's just automatic, we might as well not do the homework, because then it's just automatic anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have had requests for that. I'm also trying to think of how we can do subtitles for our courses, because there must be a kind of simple way of doing that, in the sense that if you were to just like auto-generate them, like there are software for auto-generating, it's going to be kind of terrible in the sense that it's not going to be specific enough. But if you were to go over, like if you can open up the video, go through it, and then there isn't that much talking in each video, like not like hours and hours of talking. Just go through it and just fix some things here and there. Maybe a whole course can be subtitled in like half a day or something. That'd be kind of interesting.
I mean, my Dark Souls course is, I talk in 99% of it.
Oof, yeah.
I would say there's 17 hours of talking in an 18-hour course.
That's a lot.
So that would take forever.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a good way of doing that, because it may also be the case. Maybe auto-generated subs are also decent, and then you just fix some terminology or something. Yeah, don't know.
I mean, with all this with this AI revolution, there's got to be a solid solution
Yeah.
within the next 6 months or so. Here's what we do. We get an AI to generate 18 hours worth of script for an 18-hour tutorial, right? So we know what to say for all 18 hours, and then we just plug that in. Done.
That could actually be kind of a funny video. You know those like auto captions videos where you read up the script from an auto-generated video? We can do the same thing there as well. It's just a complete nonsense video. I was trying that out actually like some months ago. I was using like, I think it was the OpenAI Playground, and I was trying to generate like a Twitter thread, and I was just like, make me a thread of 5 pieces of art advice you need to know.
Yeah, I've tried that.
And it got like, I just posted the thread as it was, and it got like 800 likes or something. It became quite a popular thread, and was like, this is 100% AI generated, all of it, and it became like one of my more popular tweets. It's bizarre how good it actually is at certain things today.
So computers are better at tweeting than you are.
Yeah, that does not take a lot. So my Twitter is going to be 100% AI generated in like 8 months. And then I'll finally get some sweet, sweet rest. Are you still working in the film industry or full-time at FlipNormals? Full-time at FlipNormals since June 2018. I think it might have been 1st of June 2018. That was our last working day. Not entirely sure. It was around that time. I think our first full-time FlipNormals day was 4th of June or something.
Yeah, I think because in May we started doing the like 1 day a week, or
we started in January actually. January 2018, yeah. But we launched the marketplace on the first of May.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting actually. We were allowed by the studio we worked at to do Mondays off. So we did that from early January 2018, and then that allowed us to really focus on YouTube, and then also build the marketplace as well. And then we launched that 1st of May, and then we saw that was doing all right, and then we resigned or we didn't extend our contracts at the end of May. And then FlipNormals ever since.
Yeah. Is it possible to start out in the industry as a character artist? Or do you start as a general 3D junior first? I would say almost 100% of people are not going to be starting as a character artist unless you're like a god tier person at sculpting, designing, whatever it is. Then most of the time you'll be giving the sort of crappier tasks in the beginning to get you comfortable. And the majority of people get stuff in the beginning as well, where you need to learn the pipeline, you need to figure out how to work in a studio before you sort of move up and get to the more juicy stuff. Sometimes it could take years. Depends on your skill level, your engagement level, commitment, that kind of stuff.
I've seen it happen a few times in the last few years where somebody went from a student to working full-time as a character artist. Now this was in the games industry, and one of them got started, I think went to Insomniac and then Blizzard, and then the other one went to Rockstar. But that's rare. Like it's technically doable, but my God, you gotta be prepared for that. You need to spend your time studying really well. So technically possible, practically pretty unlikely that that's gonna happen. Not even being like depressing about it, just the fact that it just doesn't happen very often, just from like observational evidence.
Yeah. Do you have any tips on how to paint scale displacement maps without Mari in Substance or ZBrush? In Mari, you can just grab the tool, warp projection in Substance Painter could end up very heavy, I guess.
Yeah, it's scales is one of these things that's just really tricky to do. Mari is a great tool for that. You can warp it around. And if you're doing a lot of scales, try to do it in a way where it is as procedural as possible. If you're doing in Painter, try to use fill layers as much as you can. You do also have the new warp project feature in Painter, which is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, like you say, it does get quite heavy as well. But yeah, if you're dealing with scales, that is just a legit tricky thing to do. There is not like a easy way around that. Probably the easiest one is do a good model with good mid-frequency models or good mid-frequency shapes, and then build up a or like experiment with proper tileable scales with fill layers in Painter. But you have to experiment a lot as well. You should try to find a smart solution there, but probably if you need something to match something highly specific, that's really tricky. I recommend, I advise against doing it in ZBrush, just because it's really tricky. If you need to do scales, you need such an insane poly count to make sure scales are working in ZBrush. You have to use like Noisemaker for that, and then you would have to tile around. And the problem is with that, it's you can't change it afterwards. Like it's baked into the model. So I'm looking at one ref of Mr. Weinstein. So I'm gonna find another one, and my god, this guy is looking pretty rough. Trying to use ZBrush hotkeys. That did not work super well.
I remember that was one of the tricky things with sculpting in Blender, was trying to, because my muscle memory would constantly go to ZBrush land in my head as well. It's like, oh no, don't do it like that, don't do it like that. It takes a little bit to get out of that mode.
Let's try to see what happens when I use multi-res.
Uh-oh. Remember to save.
Oh, I just did before. His name is Harvey.blend. It's one of these things that ZBrush is just a better sculpting tool. Like, stuff is just more reliable and it just works. Well, here it's like you're saying, oh, I'm using multi-res. Oh, well, in ZBrush,
what happens.
There's no oh, you just hit Control D and the thing is gonna work.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. Let's see if it actually allows me to sculpt now. Yeah, you can just see how long this actually took. In ZBrush, this would take no time. It wouldn't actually be a thing you would have to take into consideration. It would just work instantly. Oh my lord, undo is so slow here. I'm a little tempted to export this guy into ZBrush and finish him off there. But let's see. Basically, I'm reaching a little bit of a limit now with the resolution. Where, yeah, right now I can't actually work with multi-res. The undo is way too slow now. So not a happy time here, and the remeshing is also kind of reaching its limit. So this is where you do reach a point fairly early on where you have to switch it. You can of course continue. It's not like you're 100% restricted. It just gets a bit more annoying to work with. What are daily techniques for complete beginners to improve sculpting and not lose motivation? One of the ones I recommend that you do is try to do regular face studies or regular body studies, where you look at some scans and then you try to recreate those. Try to keep them a bit like restricted in scope. Like maybe you only sculpting a nose or a mouth or only a face or something like that, or you sculpting the whole bust or a whole torso, but you only have an hour to do it. That way you're gonna learn a lot. Try to not go too crazy in the sense that you shouldn't have a goal of, oh, I need to sculpt for like 8 hours a day. In the beginning, it's not going to work. But go like, I'm going to sculpt for half an hour to an hour each day, and then we're going to get to a good spot, and then you keep increasing that. Same thing if you're going to the gym. If you've never gone to the gym before, the most important thing is just show up every day. Like every day, just show up and just do like a few minutes, do like 10 minutes, and that's your job. Your job is not to do something that's absolutely perfect. It's just to show up, lift a little bit. Same thing here as well. Your job is just to show up and sculpt a little bit each day.
Here's an interesting question from Gaikokujin Maruko. For left-handed people, how are we supposed to use shortcuts? Just find them uncomfortable to reach. That's a really interesting. How do you do that? I guess you just have to learn.
Yeah, probably just honestly we just have to deal with it. Like I don't think there is like a crazy good way of doing that. I think in terms of like the interface, I know some left-handed people who will have to just like change the interface up, like move everything over here and such, and you might just have to remap a lot of stuff. The unfortunate truth is just that the vast majority of all hotkeys are based on right-handed people.
Yeah.
Very few considerations taken to left-handed people there.
Maybe you could just like move your keyboard. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I really don't know. Just really trying to figure out a way to get nice, good Dynamesh or remesh resolution on this guy here without destroying my computer.
You can switch your left and right hand through surgery.
Yeah, I don't think that's... you can try it. Okay, trying to save, and then let's see if my computer blows up. There's a non-zero chance that my computer is the stream is gonna end instantly about this. Hey, there we go. And it didn't. So I'll take that. So I'm just working up the character and just gradually trying to increase the resolution and just working up.
How are you finding it to sculpt in Blender today?
It's alright. Like the sculpting tools are decent. The sculpting tools are definitely like have
gotten better.
They've definitely got better over the last few years. They haven't got better since I made the course, I think last year, but they're much better than when you used them some years ago now. Like it's to the point that you can actually use them for like real things, which is really cool, because you really could not do that some years ago. Then you could use it for real things, and in the same way that like a product demo looks super sweet when you you can do sculpting this and the character looks awesome, and then turns out that the demo artist is just like splicing together 200 pieces of footage. I remember in like I don't know 2008 or something like that, Modo got sculpting tools. And they were showing off really, really cool demos of what the sculpt tools look like. And it turns out you just have some genius sculptor who just knows how to do it. And it's just like, just putting in the coolest things available. But the sculpting tools by themselves, they were practically unusable. And I don't know how they were able to actually do anything. I think maybe the way they did it was just time lapses and remove crashes. And this is not like to crap on the former Luxology team. They were doing a solid job. It was just sculpting tools are just really hard to get right. And but yeah, now that you can actually use them for stuff, though, if you want like the highest quality, I really think you still need ZBrush for the not even for like just like the final pours or something, which are much better to do in ZBrush, but just like the final refinement stage. I really think the result looks better in ZBrush. And
if anyone has been thinking about, man, I wish I could own like a FlipNormals branded t-shirt or a hoodie, we also actually have that available. We've had that for some while. So I just pinned something to the chat. If maybe you're looking for a Christmas present for yourself.
I want that.
Or your sibling or something is just like crazy about FlipNormals or just wants a hoodie. There's your opportunity.
We should really buy like some of that for our team, just so we have like proper brand and stuff, because I want one of those.
Can you flip the FlipNormals hoodie? Yep, it'll be inside out.
Yeah, that's you can also, a little spoiler alert, but you can also do it with non-FlipNormals hoodies as well. But obviously,
I don't think so. I don't think that works.
Oh really? Okay, yeah. Then you definitely need the official one then. Isn't there a one like will work for exposure as well? We have,
Yes.
I think we have one of those. Is that like a mug or something? Because that was a really cool one actually.
It's a mug, it's a hoodie, but it's also a t-shirt.
Oh wow! Can you send a link to that?
Yeah. We also have socks.
Oh, this modern world. Upload a design and now you have everything. It's pretty cool.
I guess I can only pin one at a time. So now we'll be pinning the work for exposure shirt, but it's all on the store.
I really like this one. This is such a stiffy one.
I want to keep this when we make new merch.
Yeah. I really like this one because the other one is I haven't seen them in a while, but maybe the trends are changing or whatever. But this one is just fun.
Someone is saying, "Is there a shirt with your faces on it? No neck, just the face." I would buy two.
I think the answer to that is there will never be such a product.
I mean, unless someone, takes a screenshot of us and puts it on a t-shirt, but which I could endorse, but I wouldn't probably put it out on our store.
Imagine wearing that yourself to like a meetup or something or an event, just a shirt with your own face on it.
Man, that's a statement.
In case people are too busy to look up on your actual face.
A Mordigan t-shirt. Oh, that's the new name for the day, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Just show up to like a meetup or something with your face on it. It's sell a shirt with Morden's name misspelled and I'll buy 10.
Yeah,
it's actually kind of funny. All the ways you could misspell my name.
They're going to be like collectibles. Can you collect all the wrong misspellings of Morten?
That was like, didn't we think about? That was like a collection, right? What was it for? We asked someone on Discord if they could like compile the whole like introductions
for
from
the
our
auto
videos
captions things. Yeah. They were like, hey, hitting a Morten here. It was always like abuse of like you basically like on YouTube you have the auto captions, and since it would never get Morten's name right, it never recognized that Morten's both our names are not like standard English names, so it would never recognize that they were actually names, so it would just try to do the best it could. So Henning would be like hunting and like all sorts of stuff.
My favorite one is Henley.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, there was one comment where like, hey, Henley Morten, can you like let the other guy talk for a bit?
Yeah. I'm wondering if they legit thought that it was just like it was one name, Henley Morten.
Yeah, it's fantastic regardless.
So the hoodies aren't on the marketplace. They're in our Spring Tea store.
Teespring, I think.
Teespring, that's the one. That's Spring Tea.
Spring Tea.
Oh, apparently we have a 15% discount on our merch.
We haven't touched that in years. How did that happen?
I didn't know. I probably created a shirt or a discount code. So use this at checkout for 15% off.
You can tell that FlipNormals is surviving 100% due to merch revenue. That's definitely we're definitely on top of this.
Oh man, yeah, we haven't really done anything with that in a while.
But speaking of, we do have 50% off on the marketplace though, due to the Black Friday sale. If you guys are interested in like some specific products, like if you want to learn something specific, let us know and we can see if we can find like a recommended product as well. Because we have one more day of the sale after today, and then it's one more year until we have these sweet discounts again.
What's a runner and is being hired as one commonplace nowadays? So a runner, basically, they do a lot of practical tasks around the company, but not actual work for the most part. Well,
like
I should say actual
work.
Creative work. They tend to the kitchens, collect cups, follow people around, take notes with them, and then they'll get sort of like tasks along along on the side that they can then start to work on. So they'll express an interest in a field, for example, modeling, and then your day-to-day job will be the running part, and then you'll have time where you'll get a workstation in some places where you can do the 3D work and sort of improve until you can then hopefully get hired. And yeah, it's pretty commonplace.
Yeah. What you need to be aware of is that a lot of people, they've heard that, oh, the head of 3D at this company started as a runner, so therefore if I start as a runner, then I'll get a job. The truth is that you can get started in VFX or any field like that as a runner, but you need to be good enough as well. So let's go back a step here. So in order to get a job, two things you need to do. One is you need to be good, and number two is you have to show people that you're good. So if you are already good, then you can show people that you're good. And that can be, for instance, through running. But if you're not good enough, that means that showing people that you're good enough is just pointless. Like if you now are going to move to London or move to Vancouver or something, and you're trying to become a runner and starting a career that way, that is just entirely pointless unless you have this step here, unless you are already good enough. Because I've seen this so many times. We have runners who have started in VFX and then they're laid off like a few months later just because they just could not, like they just were not good enough to get started. But if you are already good enough in your, if you're already good enough, then it's a good way to show the correct people that you know what's up. Like you can actually perform tasks and such. You just really have to be sure that you are at a good level beforehand. And the universal question is then, how do you know? How do you know if good enough? And this just comes back to the whole thing. Just ask somebody. Honestly, ask somebody who knows what they're doing. And how do you find these people? Well, if you want to, let's say you want to get a job at Digital Domain, how do you find somebody who's good enough for that? Go LinkedIn, search for Digital Domain Modeler, see if you can find somebody, write them a kind, short, brief message, and ask them straight up, am I good enough to start this? If they say no, you are not good enough for that. So really, before doing like big life-changing things like that, just be sure just to do some proper research. It really surprises me how many people are doing these kind of huge life-changing things like, oh, I'm gonna move to London and become a runner, without having figured out, is the skill level they possess good enough to even get started? So really figure out. It's the same thing with schools as well. Like, people are attending schools and they've really not done any research on the schools, and now they go attend a crappy school. Just take research really seriously. Imagine if you are like a mechanical keyboard enthusiast. Now spend as much time researching your school and this kind of stuff as a mechanical enthusiast would spend on the next mechanical keyboard. Really just research the crap out of it.
I think I'm gonna have to stop here for today. I need to prep dinner for my child now. So
that is okay. Your baby might have, or your toddler might have, be more important than Blender sculpting.
What?
That is
but
okay.
I'll join again tomorrow and I'll be sculpting. Now I saw someone saying I can't wait for hard surface tomorrow. Don't get your hopes up. We'll see what happens. But let's see. I'll play around with some things and maybe I'll throw a few tips your way to see if maybe there's something you can learn.
I just want you to know that my hopes are already up, Morten, and
damn it,
that this is now set in stone. But yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow, and then hopefully some hard surface, maybe not. At least some nice Morten streaming tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, cool. See you tomorrow then, Morten.
All right. See you, everyone.
All right, I am still here, and I'll stay here for a little while longer, and then we'll stop for today as well. So I'm trying to do it's kind of like Lord of the Rings style orc, kinda. So I'm just looking at some reference on the side, and then I'm looking at some orc reference as well, just of like a person and of the design as well. But yeah, just be sure to check out FlippedNormals.com. Plenty of really, really cool products. We have, for instance, this one, which is one of the ones we released this year, which is called Character Face Texturing Substance Painter. And this is where you learn how to do this thing from scratch, the whole character. And well, the textures and the shaders from scratch. We start off in ZBrush with this, and then we learn how to export it to Painter directly from ZBrush without going through like intermediary software. Then getting started with painting the whole character, all the maps, using the Warp project in Painter with the FlipNormals face kit as well. And then setting it up in Arnold as well, setting up all the shaders using proper skin shading techniques. And then just going through the whole thing. So Swishy saying, that course is so good. Thank you very much. So that is link in the chat right now. Yeah, so let me know if you guys want to learn something specific. If it's we might have YouTube videos on it as well. So if you have any if you have any specific learning goals, either ZBrush or Blender or really anything career-wise, let me know. A good way to figure that out, what you want to learn, is more, instead of being like figuring out specific what course, it's more like what kind of general direction do you want to go in, like what is your end goal as a career, or like, you know, maybe starting goal as a career, not like where would you want to be in like 20 years, but more like if you could choose a job right now as an entry-level role, or if you want to progress your career, where would you go? So yeah, this is all just sculpted in Blender, just using the same techniques as in ZBrush. There's really nothing unique about the sculpting in Blender compared to like other software in the sense like there is no like magical feature. It's just good old solid start with the bones, get in the fleshy parts, the cartilage, the skin and the fat. For small non-deformable meshes like teeth, can you get away with automatic retouch or should always do it manually? Well, specifically for teeth, I recommend just grabbing an existing set of teeth, unless you have something highly bespoke, like maybe you have some crazy monster teeth or something. What I recommend there is actually to do a tooth beforehand and do proper retopology for that, and then duplicate it around, because that means you're just going to have the best of both worlds. You're going to have like good topology for it, and you can UV map it as well beforehand, and you're also going to have the nice placement on the sculpt. But if you for whatever reason didn't do that, then yeah, it's a fine idea to just like automatically retopologize it. Just be aware that if you need them to all be UV'd, then it can be annoying, because the automatic topology is terrible for UVs in the sense that you're not going to have seams in logical places. But depending on your output, it can be fine. Particularly if it's something like a rock or something, then like just auto topologize this, depending again on the output. I want to be an indie game dev. Yeah, that's cool. It depends entirely on, you know, exactly what you want to learn in indie dev. Like there are so many different positions in gaming. It's really hard to just to recommend something just for becoming like an indie dev. It really just depends on specifically the position. What are some of your favorite brushes in ZBrush? Besides, and then there's a list of hotkeys. Smooth Stronger. Smooth Stronger is amazing. You find that under Lightbox, Brushes, Smooth, and Smooth Stronger. Really, really good. Damn Standard is brilliant as well. Really, really, really good brush. And then Clay Buildup is fantastic. You can experiment with the alpha there as well. You also have one thing that you can play with as well. It's called a roll distance. Obviously, I'm not in ZBrush right now, but if you go under... If you have like clay tubes, for instance, clay tubes is really, really intense in the sense that the alpha is really harsh. But if you go to, I think it's on stroke, and then under stroke somewhere there's something called roll distance, you can change that from like 1 to like 7 or 8. Basically just like elongates the alpha. That can really help you get like nicer results with that. It's just going to look a lot more natural that way. Toy saying, well, using Blender is quite a change up for the stream. Wasn't expecting that. Yeah, I've been wanting to do a Blender stream for a while now. It's really nice to play around in Blender. I'm really enjoying it. It's a ton of fun to do that. One thing is I actually want to play around with now. I actually want to see if I can light him up a little bit. So I'm going to just switch, well, I'm going to split the viewport in half, just so we can have something that looks a little bit better. So object mode, and then we're going to switch this to, yeah, CPU is fine, but viewport samples is going to be like 30, just so we don't destroy my computer. We're going to hit the 0 key, lock camera to view, so we can do this, and then I'm going to change the resolution. So this is like more portrait, like so. And then I'm going to, yeah, that's fine. And then I'm going to just leave it like this, and then we're going to switch this to a rendered viewport like this. And now you can see it stops basically right away, so this doesn't cause any performance issues. It's actually going to set even less, like 15. It's going to be crazy noisy, but that's fine. It just means it's going to have a good performance for us. And then we can go under, just make sure this we are in object mode. And then I'm going to set up some lights here. And we just have to enable this so we can see the lights. And the light here is terrible because it's too small. What you can do with lights, there's two really cool things on lights. You see you have the little gizmo here, this one here, the yellow one. You can just hold this one, and this is just going to be a target, or you can just hit Shift and T, and you can move this to where you want to be as well. So I'm going to make this nice and bright. You can Shift T, or what you can do, which is really cool as well, you can double tap the R key. That gives you a lot of control as well with this. Just double tap R, and there you go. Just gonna go in here and make sure the wireframe is not enabled. And then I'm gonna split this again. And then we're gonna go down to shader editor. Then we're gonna switch this to world. And then here we have a little HDRI for us. I'm just gonna make this a lot weaker. 0.2. Just so we have something, maybe 0.1. I just want to have a little bit of a reflection going on. 0.1. 0.05, something like that. We just want it to be very, very, very minute. And then I'm going to go into the light here, and then I'm going to make this really strong. Let's see if this is the one that's okay. The other one, let's just disable this one altogether. There we go. And then I just want to make sure this one is showing up. And what you can do when it comes to lighting here, I just tend to do like X2. Like multiply by 2 instead of like doing the scrolling thing, because it just, so we can do that. I can just make it a bit bigger. So this is a huge advantage Blender has over ZBrush. Like doesn't even compare. The fact that you can do this right in the viewport is beyond insane. It means that like I can keep sculpting on this guy, like no problem at all. I can just go in here and just do sculpt mode, and I can just continue sculpting on him. So I can go in here and I can just do this, and then it's going to update basically in real time up here. I think I might just have to like reset this or something, maybe a cache thing. Yeah, so there we go, and boom, it's there. So it's really good for that. So let's see if there's some cool stuff we can do with this. Okay, yes, I want to make this. We're just going to call this a rim. And now you're going to see a stupid thing in Blender. It's gonna, I actually didn't. Let's do key. So this one here is going to be alphabetical. So you can't have an arbitrary order of items in a collection. So I'm going to call this light. So I just tend to put everything in collection, so we can just enable and disable this. But yeah, it means you can't move stuff up and down like you can in Maya, for instance. So if this, for instance, is called 0, this is going to move up, while if it's called like K is beyond or is earlier in alphabet than R. So if you call this like 1, it's going to move it above it. Highly frustrating that this doesn't work, that you don't have arbitrary sorting in Blender. And then we just enable this, and then what you can do, you can add a tiny bit of color to it. This is where you can really have fun with this. You don't want to go too crazy with this. It can also be quite cool that it's really just light, or like very desaturated. And then you can go in here into the other one, and then you can go in here, and then we can just change this as well, like so. Let's see if there are any comments about this. Yeah, if you switch an Eevee, you can sculpt in real time. Yep. Then we can just do the key light like so, and we can just make this even. Maybe we can do like ×3 just to make this even brighter. Basically, you need a lot more contrast than you think. You always just need more contrast than you think, because humans are terrible at contrast. Your eyes get used to something so fast. Then I'm just gonna make a fill light here because it's a little bit dark, And then this is actually cool because now you can see the eye, and you can see that this wasn't working super well. So now we can select the eyes. We can just hit Control and 1 just so it subdivides once. We can go in here, add a new material. We can make this dark like so. And we can change the roughness, so this is like quite shiny. And then we can do the same thing with the teeth as well. We can add we already have materials here, so we can just remove these guys and add a new one. And we can make this quite dark as well. And we can make it a little bit like teeth colored, but darker. And then the fill light is not supposed to do what it's doing now because it destroys the whole thing. So I'm just going to call this fill, and probably going to change order, and it did. Really annoying. And then I'm just going to do like divide it by 10 just to make it significantly weaker. So you can see the advantage of this is just that it just softens it off a little bit. Now, this is something that's actually really stupid in Blender. I think this is really, really dumb that this is on by default. See here, it has like has two icons. It has this icon, and then it has this icon. So this and this. If you hide one of these, if you hide like the fill one in the viewport, it looks like this is done now, and this is disabled. Problem is it's not, because the second icon here is a render. This looks like it's being rendered, but this is just a viewport which is being rendered, which means that there are two completely different settings. So if you have a really complex scene and you do this a lot and disable things, you just have to be sure to disable both of them, because otherwise you're just going to be in a world of pain. So you also just have to be sure that it's enabled up here as well. So you have the render icon, and this is like, if there was like an overall disable thing which was enabled by default, that would save a lot of pain. Or if this was actually a rendered viewport, or if if the render image up here would also be like IPR, like interactive, that would also save you a lot of pain as well, because this is pretty insane the way it is currently. It just causes so many issues. And we could play with subsurface with this now. Let's actually play around a little bit with that. So subsurface. And then I'm going to do to get a color into the subsurface radius, which is what I prefer. I'm going to just go into the object, and then I'm going to do like a RGBA, RGB, mix RGB, that's the one. And then I'm going to set the FAC to 0, and then this is going to be the color. And I want this to be like a dark, desaturated one, like so. And this guy here is going to go into the radius. And now we can control the radius with this one. And we just have to set the color to be quite low as well. And then we just have to set this to, I prefer the fixed radius one. And now we just can get some decent subsurface. And this is generally how I tend to do it when it comes to subsurface. Then we just do subsurface color, and this is where we can really control the subsurface color here now. Just change the radius, make this a bit brighter. But yeah, this is just one of the advantages of doing this all in Blender, that you can actually have subsurface on when you're rendering, which is super cool. It's just really, really powerful. We also have something here called AGX as well. AGX is basically like a better way of doing it compared to Filmic. Filmic tends to really like soften off or like desaturate the colors a lot more. Well, AGX is very similar to Filmic. I mean, I believe it's made by the same developer, but it just preserves the colors a lot more. So I always prefer to use AGX. You can just find this if you just search AGX, and then you just replace that with Filmic. So this is a really cool way of doing it. But enough about this. Let's get back to sculpting. So I'm just going to collapse this guy here, just join areas, and then we're just going to collapse all this. And then back to some sculpting. Do you use unrealistic subsurface colors of fantasy characters, or just always red? Yeah, it kind of depends on what I'm looking for. I tend to, like for fantasy characters, if they're supposed to look realistic, you kind of got to use some realistic colors for it, to be honest. If because it's not just like what radius you use for it or what colors. This is something that you need to think about when it comes to texture painting as well, because it's really important to consider that when texture painting. So I'm just going over now, just smoothing the mesh out a little bit. And yeah, just as a reminder that we have 50% off nearly all products on FlipNormals right now. Sale ending tomorrow. So if there's something you've been looking at, check it out. Be sure to check it out today. Or tomorrow. Tomorrow is also fine. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to just soften off the details within a shape. So how it works, if you have a shape like this and this is the volume you want, then I'm trying to soften off within the shape, and then you have a different color for like these ones, and then I'm trying to preserve volumes within these shapes so that they're just like, I'm not softening off the whole thing. I'm smoothing things off, but it's still within a general volume. Have you ever tried Dyntopo? If so, what's your experience? Yeah, Dyntopo is great. I've used it a fair bit. It's really good if you need specific or more resolution in a specific area and you don't want to add that everywhere. So for instance, if let's say I couldn't add more resolution to the whole thing, but now I want more resolution on the eyes, I can go in and I can use Dyntopo for that. Do you prefer Blender or ZBrush matte cap? Yeah, I still prefer ZBrush for that, to be honest. Though the matte cap here is great as well. Like, you know, all these are pretty solid. I can just change this now just to play around with this a little bit. What are some common injuries in the industry and how to avoid them? Nearly all the injuries are relating to overwork. There were very few like traditional workplace injuries. Like when I used to work in construction, and like I once fell into a hole. Like that stuff isn't going to happen. And people would like injure themselves of explosives and such. So the injuries we have are less violent. The injuries we have tend to be more from like systemically destroying your body by not taking breaks or taking care of your health. So first one I would say is your arm just gets destroyed from this. So I tend to like do this quite a lot, just like flex this, really just like flex it like so. That's going to help a ton. But then get a good chair, sit in a proper chair. Like I'm currently sitting on a pretty good chair. You can buy a lot of really good like Herman Miller chairs, like secondhand and such. They're crazy expensive if you buy them full price, but I currently have a Herman Miller chair here, just in my home office, which is really saving me. So that is definitely a thing. Get a good chair. It's worth spending time on that. Basically, it's worth spending time on anything that separates you from the ground, like chairs, shoes, or a good bed. And just a lot of life experience there, I suppose. And then you have burnout. Burnout is a trickier one because that's one of these things you probably don't even notice it until it's already happened. But you just have to listen to your body. Like really listen to your body. If you're feeling like you're just completely destroyed, just take a break. It's a very hard one to give advice on because first off, everyone's body is different and people can handle different levels of intensity. But it's just a very hard one because it's tricky to give advice on it, because on one hand, in order to do well in this industry, you have to work hard. There's just no substitute for that. At the same time, you have to play the long game and not destroy your body entirely. Like when I was a student, like both Morten and I, we work until like 3 a.m. a lot, and it means you get a lot of work done short term, but long term, you're really harming yourself. So I would say try to work in a sustainable manner. Really figure out how you can find a pace, which means you can keep working on this for a long time. You may see like other people in school or online and such, they're progressing faster than you, but that could be short term. Maybe you see this sometimes where you have people who just like, they go insane, they produce such cool work, and then they just disappear for like 5 months, and it's just because they're recovering now. So it's entirely unfeasible to work for something like 6 hours after work or school a day, every single day, like on your own stuff. You can do it for a while, but you just can't put, let's say you have full-time work or something, you can't put 12-hour work days in. Just impossible to do that. anyone who says they can consistently pull out 12-hour days are either some insane genetic freaks, or they're lying to you, or they're not really putting in 12 hours, or they're telling that they're miscalculating how much time they actually spend on it. Because if you keep doing that consistently, your body just cannot handle that. Do you utilize sculpt layers in your usual workflow? Oh yeah, sculpt layers are fantastic. You don't really have layers in Blender, so obviously I can't do it here. But in general, yeah. Here's something that's more like a fundamental skill in sculpt. This is kind of cool. So you see this guy, he's kind of like, there's more volume in this region here, like in his brow region. And that's because he's like doing a bit of a frown. So when he's doing that, that means that he's basically borrowing skin from somewhere else. So if there is more skin here, that means there's less skin up here. And that means that you're going to often see that, well, not often, you're always going to see that there's more like compression happening here. If I just undo this or sculpt over, there's more compression happening in this region. There's going to be more like wrinkles in like this region, like so. But also where it's borrowing the skin from, there's going to be more wrinkles, like so. Just because it's stretching. The amount of volume is equal to 1. So this region here is, before might be like 50 or 50-50. I just forgot how to write 0. So 50-50, but in this case now, this region here might be like 80-20. It means there's less skin here. So if one area compresses, another area will have to stretch. That's just how it works. Dovaduck is saying, I used to sculpt for 10 hours a day consistently for a while, and then that turned into 1 year break and pretty much unlearn everything during that time. Yeah, it's just not sustainable to do it for longer periods of time. It just truly is not sustainable. My body tried to tell me a lot of times that probably you should take a little break now. And I was like, nope. Then I got really hurt, and that's why I have a glove. Because if I don't have a glove, then it hurts to sculpt a lot more. Just because my hand gets a little bit sweaty, and over a tablet it just lags a little bit. Not like a crazy issue or anything, just a bit more comfortable. So if I don't have that, I will usually have something like a t-shirt or something, and just put that between. The sculpting brushes here I'm using are basically draw sharp, and clay strips, and then grab. If you have those brushes, you're gonna be fine. You can really do anything you want to them. And here's something as well I'm trying to do. I haven't done it yet in this, but I'm trying to make sure that the volume here on the inside of the mouth is more like this. Basically, you often see this on the inside of the mouth once it's open, that the lips basically will do this shape on the inside. So on the outside it goes more like this, and the inside it goes like this, like wing shape like this. So I'm just trying to, actually I can do this with the grab brush, but I'm just trying to get in here and just add this shape like so. And it's really important to do this from different angles. Do you have some neat websites you got a reference for? From this stuff, I just Googled stuff. So just Google images. For sculpture reference, probably one of the best ones is 3dscanstore.com. 3dscanstore is just a store that sells scans. It's kind of a name. The cool thing about that is that it's all just scan-based stuff. So it's all based on the truth. Like, it's all based on the real world. So you can trust, at least in large part, that this is just how it looks. If stuff looks weird, that's just how it looks. So sometimes oftentimes the real world looks really, really weird, but you just have to accept that. and adding weirdness into your sculpt can really add a lot of variation to it. Any thoughts about doing sculpting in Maya? Yeah, very, very clear thoughts on that. Don't do it. Sculpting in Maya is terrible. Sculpting in Maya is just not good. The sculpting tools themselves, like the pure move, grab, brush, they're fine-ish, but it just you just don't really have sculpting tools apart from that. So the sculpting ranking would be ZBrush on top. Then you probably have Mudbox, and then you have Blender, and then all the way on the bottom, then you have Maya. But yeah, going to stop the stream pretty soon. So if you guys have any final questions, feel free to ask me. I'll probably do like 1 or 2 more questions, and then we will have our last Black Friday stream tomorrow, and then Morten and I will rest, which is going to be lovely. Yeah, Miko is saying that 3D code is probably a better option than sculpting for Mudbox these days, since Mudbox isn't being developed. Yeah, probably. I haven't sculpted in Mudbox, so I don't really know what that is like, to be perfectly honest. It looks pretty solid. He's very much right, or the person writing now is very much right in the sense that Mudbox is not an active dev. What software do you prefer to do baking? I don't really bake. I'm not a game artist. I don't really deal with that. So baking is just a way to optimize things. I kind of just do it without optimizing. There's no reason for me to optimize my work. And also my background is in film, where you don't really optimize things, just because you just want to have the full experience of that. Dave is saying, not a question, but just a sincere thanks for the amazing content and resources you've been given over the years. Good job, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Dave. It's been a ride. Much more to come, though. So yeah, this is pretty much as far as I've taken him in. This is about, let's see how long we're streaming now. I've been going for 2 hours and 16 minutes. Wow, time flies. Really fun to do this sculpt. This just started from a box in a cube in Blender, and they've just been sculpting up using remeshing and just basically just like a few different tools here and there. Kind of liking where he's heading. So I think with that, I will stop the stream. This will of course be available on YouTube later on, and we also have a lot of other streams in, like I've done this during Black Friday. So if you just caught the stream right now, you do plenty of more you can actually watch, and we're going to do another one tomorrow. So yeah, just be sure to check out the Black Friday FlipNormals sale. The sale ends in 1 day and 15 hours. According to our website. So tons of really cool references. I wish I could show you this one, but that would probably, I'm just gonna scroll down. That was probably going to break our YouTube service. But basically Graphit, they have some of the best references available. Just gonna send a link to that. So this is Graphit. Some of this is pretty not safe for work, just in terms of like the subject matter. It's just really good references. So check that out. And then we have Advanced Character Creation with Ben Erd. This is a brilliant course. This is a really advanced character course. See if I can actually select the text. There we go. So this is a fantastic course as well. 50% off during the Black Friday sale. Let's see if we have a link to this. We do. If links wants to work. There we go. So now it sent this one off. This is a great course where you learn how to make this one from scratch. And then we have Intro to Sculpting in Blender. If you like the sculpting I did in like so far during this, and you want to learn how to do that, we have a really solid series on how to get started with sculpting in Blender as well. Here, link to that. And then we have a lot more stuff. So the last one I want to talk about is this one, which is the realistic character portrait masterclass. This is the course I just finished last. We just released this like some weeks ago, a month ago. And this is almost 21 hours of real-time lectures on this. We go through how to create this guy from start to finish. This actually uses Blender a lot. So this is sculpted in ZBrush all the way. UVs and retopology in Blender, texture painting in Painter, do all this kind of good stuff in ZBrush with all the little pores and such, and then UVs here in Blender, texture painting in Painter, shading and light in Blender, and then final work in post work in Photoshop. So I highly recommend this product as well. This is like 21 hours, and this is like a proper masterclass, which took a very long time to create. So I hope you enjoy this one. So yeah, with that said, we are going to stop the stream. Absolute pressure, and I really hope we can do more streams again in the future. That'd be tons of fun. So yeah, cool. See you guys later.